Hello everyone, it's Meg or welcome to a new video. Today I'm going to be talking about some books that I feel like are a little bit underrated in the book community, on BookTube. Just for me personally, from who I follow and watch content and consume content on in this community, and I just think deserve a little bit more love. And I think I have done a video like this in the past quite a few years ago. If I do remember, or if I do have one, I will leave it in the description down below. I probably will have done that quite a long time ago, from what I can remember anyway. But yeah, I just want to talk about some books that I think are underrated or that I haven't seen many people talk about, that I think you guys should know about and you should read because I really enjoyed them. So we have 8 books to talk about, and I have a nice mixture. I have some graphic novels, non-fiction, I have contemporary historical fiction, a little bit of YA, got a little bit of everything. So I hope you guys enjoy this video and let's get started. Let's mix it up and start with some graphic novels. So I have 2 graphic novels first. So the first one is If You'll Have Me by Uni, and I think I read this last year. It's either last year or the year before I read this. And I thought this was so cute. This is just a sapphic romance story, and I really enjoyed it. I love the characters, I love the art. The art is the bit that I probably liked the most. Let me see if I can find a really stunning moment for you to have a look at. My memory card was full, so not quite sure where I was up to, but I think I showed you some a few little moments from this. Look how beautiful that is. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. This is just a really obviously fun, cute, beautiful, wholesome sapphic love story, and it's very nice if you just want something easy and comforting to read. I feel like it's very much that vibe. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I have heard Jodie talk about this, but I don't think I've heard anybody else. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. Next we have Alison by Lizzie Stewart, and I loved this. Again, I think I read this maybe about 2 years ago, and this is set in the 1980s, I think, 70s, 80s, oh no, in the late 70s. So it follows our main character called Alison, and she is in her early 20s and she's got married very young, and then she meets this older artist and he basically persuades her to come to London with him. So she leaves her husband and her life in Dorset to go and become an artist in London. And I love the movement, the art movement that was happening in London in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, contemporary art movement. So it's very much about that, and Alison finding her feet and all that sort of thing. And I adored this. Like I said, I like that period, and the art style is quite interesting, I must admit. So it's a mixture of black and white, and then I think there's colour in here, bits of colour here and there, but yeah, there's another black and white one. But yeah, so it's slightly different layouts for a usual graphic novel, because it tends to have more, it obviously has speech bubbles and stuff like a typical graphic novel, but it does also have, I don't know how well you can see that, but it also has prose as well, and it's kind of maybe slightly multimedia. But I really enjoyed this. It was one of those books that I could just totally envelop myself in. And like I said, obviously it deals with art and kind of finding yourself, and it also deals with friendship, love, all that sort of thing. Obviously, and set in London. So I adored this. So I think if you are kind of into art, or maybe you want, or any of the themes that I mentioned before, and you are interested in trying out a graphic novel that's a slightly different format to the usual ones, definitely give this a go. I need to see what other books Lizzie Stewart has, and if she has any more graphic novels, because like I said, I loved this book. So I have 2 non-fiction, and those are Word Slut, The Feminist Guide to Taking Back the English Language by Amanda Montell. I first got this recommendation off Chloe from Chloe Bunny, and I devoured this book. I listened to the audio, which is narrated by the author, really enjoyed it, and I actually bought a physical copy before I'd even finished the audiobook because I loved it that much. So Amanda is a feminist linguist, and this book is basically about of like language and how it connects to like feminism and the way that women are treated, and how like women and other minority groups have been like oppressed through language. And there's so much more to it than that, but this is so interesting. I think if you love learning about like linguistics and obviously feminism as well, I think you will really love this book. It's just so interesting. It tells you about like the history of certain words and how certain like phrases and tones of voice are kind of used and kind of put into boxes depending on like your gender and your sexuality and all that sort of thing. It's just so interesting. I love this, and I do want to reread it so I can annotate it. I did start doing that the other year, but I need to carry on because, like I said, I absolutely adore this book, and I will always recommend it to everybody because it kind of low-key blew my mind, and that's how much I loved it. And the second non-fiction book I have is All the Young Men, How One Woman Risked It All to Care for the Dying by Ruth Coker Burks and Kevin Carr O'Leary. I finally got down to reading this last year, and I absolutely adored this book. Like I said, I adore all of these books, but this is definitely one of the top ones on my list. This is a memoir about Ruth Coker Burks, and this starts off her in her like early 20s, and she lives in a very religious Christian southern town. She's a single mother, and somehow she ends up becoming an accidental activist for AIDS, and she ends up taking in and caring for hundreds of men who are positive with AIDS on HIV. And this woman is a powerhouse. I did talk about this book maybe in my favourites of the year. This woman deserves a medal. She is phenomenal. She did things like getting housing for all these sick men to live in. She got food for them. She was getting healthcare for them. She was doing like tests and doing like safe like sex ed and gay bars and all that sort of thing. She was absolutely phenomenal. It was so inspiring, and it also really shows you the reality of what it was like during the AIDS crisis during like the 80s and 90s. And how there was so much prejudice, and how poorly all these sick men were treated in the hospitals, but also the hope that where people like Ruth were helping them. I just thought she's an absolutely phenomenal woman, and if you like all of that sort of topic that I just talked about, this book, please read this book. This is one of my faves on this list. Like I said, I adored it. I think Ruth is phenomenal. She definitely deserves more credit than I feel like she got. But yeah, I really adored this. It was very inspirational and just a really beautiful story. So finally we have 4 fiction books to talk about. The first one is a YA, and that is All About Romance by Daniel Torse. I think that's how you pronounce it. Apologies if not. I read this last year, and I've had my eye on it for a while since it came out, because this is written by a northern author, I believe. I believe they are from Newcastle. And this is also set in Newcastle. So this follows our main character, Roman Bright, and they are queer and non-binary living in a small town, and they are in school. I think they're in year 11, I think. And it's basically just a coming of age story about them, and they realise that they have kind of like a secret kind of admirer, and they're trying to figure out who it is. It's also about friendship and first love, and obviously kind of like finding yourself coming of age, identity, all that sort of thing. And it was just so much fun. I really love Roman as a main character. I don't think I've ever read a book about a non-binary, like the main character is non-binary, or at least in like a high school setting. So that was really nice to read about, and I love Roman's mum. She is a queen, so supportive, and yeah, I think it's a really beautiful story. I think it is a story that more people, especially obviously teens, which this is aimed at, should read about, because I think it's it's a very relevant story for this day and age. And yeah, it was very heartwarming and fun, and like a very refreshing twist on like your just average high school story. So I really love this, and I don't think I've ever heard anybody talk about this, but like I said, I really adored it, and I definitely think more people should read it. Making It by Laura Kay. I think this is the last book that I read, and I have read most of Laura Kay's previous books. I think the only one I haven't read is Wild Things, but this book was right up my street. It had so many themes that I loved. It has art, friendships, being in your 20s, mental health. There are like so many like top tier subjects that I love to read about, and this book follows our main character called Izzy, and she ends up getting her dream job at a art studio in London, and it's basically about her moving to London and experiencing all these new things for the first time. And she has depression, she struggles with depression, so obviously there is that element kind of incorporated into it. I really love her housemates as well, they're like a cute little family. I really loved that, and kind of the dynamics with all of the other characters, and I thought the characters were very endearing as well. I think it's just it was just such a fun story, and I love Laura's wit. She has such witty writing, it just seems to flow off the page so easily. And yeah, like I said, I adored this, and I know Laura is quite a well-loved author, and I adore her books. So like I said, this is probably my favourite of hers that I have read so far, just because it has so many aspects that I love to read about, like I said. But yeah, I really adored this, and I don't think I've heard anybody talk about it on like social media, or at least from the people that I personally follow. But I adored this, and I will definitely have to read Wild Things by Laura, because I've not got to that yet. Rosewater by Liv Little. This is one of my first reads of this year actually, and I got this in my advent calendar that I got from Rare Birds Books. So this is about our main character called Elsie, and she is 28, she lives in London, she's a poet, she's broke, living on minimum wage, and she's tired, and that related to me on so many levels. And this again is kind of like a being lost in your 20s, trying to find your way kind of book. And I loved it because, like I said, Elsie is a poet, and as a poet myself, I just love books that are about poets or have poetry in them. I just adore it so much. I love the writing, it was so fun, and like I said, love the poetry aspects, love the relationships and the characters and everybody in here. It was just so fun. It's just very witty and fun, coming of age, and I think very realistic for like a lot of like 20-somethings in this day and age. And lastly, we have A Lady's Guide to Scandal by Sophie Irwin. This was one of my top books of last year, and I listened to the audiobook. It took me about 6 months to read it, I think, but that's because I'm just terrible at reading audiobooks. However, I adored it. I don't think I would have enjoyed it as much if I had physically read it. I might have, who knows, but I love this. So this is about our main character, Eliza, and at 27 she finds herself a widow, and she was in a marriage that was not very healthy. Her husband was quite emotionally abusive, and she ends up with his fortune, obviously because she's become widowed, and she's allowed to have it as long as she doesn't cause a scandal. And Eliza at the beginning of this book starts off very meek and kind of quiet. She has no self-esteem. So after her husband's death, she decides to go to Bath with her cousin Margaret, and that's where she's going to mourn. And then they end up running into some wealthy siblings, and it kind of goes off from there, really. I did read Sophie Irwin's first book and I did enjoy it. However, I really adored this one a lot more. Like I said, the transformation of Eliza from the beginning of the book to the end of the book is phenomenal. There's so much growth, and I love the characters. There's also a little bit of queer representation in here as well. I think this is either set in, I think this is set in the Georgian era, this book, I think, or the Victorian era. I think I'm heading more towards the Georgian at the moment. But there was a twist in here that I wasn't expecting, which turned out so well. It made the book so much more interesting, and I just loved it so much. And it definitely is kind of like a slightly different novel, like historical novel, in the fact that Eliza kind of chooses to pave her own life for herself. Like, she has all these people with all these expectations on her as being a wealthy, like, high society woman, and she decides she just doesn't want all of that, and she definitely learns to carve a new life out for herself that she truly loves, regardless of what anybody else thinks. So those are all the books that I wanted to share with you guys today. I love all of these books, you know, I love them, I adore them. I hope that this video has inspired you to maybe pick some of them up and to read them. Let me know in the comments if you are excited or would like to read any of them. Let me know in the comments down below. And if you have any books that you think that are underrated or you don't think people talk about as much and should, let me know in the comments, because I'm always looking for book recommendations and I know you guys are as well. And if you got to the end of this video and you got this far, comment the paint palette emoji, like the art palette emoji, because I have a couple of books that have like themes of art in here. So I think, like I said, do the the paint palette, if that makes sense, for the emoji in the comments down below to let me know that you got to the end of this video, because I've been enjoying doing this for like my past couple of videos. So yeah, leave it in the comments if you got to this part of the video. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you have not already. I will leave the links to my social media along with my Goodreads in the description down below for you guys if you would like to see more bookish content that you will not find on this channel. But thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you so much, and I will see you again very soon. Bye guys!